What does Eddie Van Halen and Jimi Hendrix and Allan Holdsworth all have in common, besides being paradigm-shattering and genre-defining guitarists, of course? These three guys understood something about improvisation that 99% of guitarists completely miss. All three of these guys studied jazz, but not because they wanted to sound jazzy, whatever that means. They wanted to sound completely unique. They wanted to sound genre-defining. See, if you have mastered all your scales and you've got a bunch of technique, but you still hate the way you sound when you improvise, you know that it's shy, it's timid, it lacks confidence, you're about to understand what separates legends from all the other people who have mastered all their scales and have built up technique. Because there's a very specific difference between legends and everyone else. In this video, I'm going to explain exactly what Eddie Van Halen learned from playing piano, okay? What Jimi Hendrix learned from studying Wes Montgomery, and what Allan Holdsworth can teach us about playing chord changes as guitarists. In doing so, I will be able to demonstrate the exact mental framework that is going to bust open your infinite creativity glitch. And we are going to accomplish all of this without having to resort to boring jazz exercises. See, if you think that's what jazz mastery is all about, with that boring tone, basically just sounding like a complete nerd, where you're wasting time playing things that are not musical, they're theoretical, and just completely missing the connection between theory and reality, no wonder you're not learning it. And the exact way that you're gonna connect theory and reality is by seeing your unique musical vision as the guiding principle, not boring jazz that sounds like a 1950s lounge act. I can take those same chord changes and just not sound like a nerd on them, right? You know what I'm saying, right? 3 and up, 4 and up. Right? It's like I was following the same exact rules that Jens Larsen is demonstrating there, but I simply have this awareness that I can play changes any way that I want. And really that's where Allan Holdsworth shows up to the party. That's really what he showed us. He showed us how to be an absolute freak show of chord changes, but playing like an intergalactic rock master. The only reason people even call him a jazz musician is because they just don't know what else to call him. What you can understand about Allan Holdsworth was that he was using the mental framework known as jazz to an extremely advanced level, a more extremely advanced level than Eddie Van Halen or Jimi Hendrix, of course. But the key understanding is that it is the same mental framework that not just Eddie and Jimi were using, but literally any masterful guitarist you can think of that you know to be a monstrous improviser. They all understand this mental framework that is known as jazz, which is very misleading because then you start to look over at Jens Larsen, you're like, oh, I better make sure I can play, jazz, where you literally sound like a 1950s lounge act, right? That's what's turning everybody off, and they're missing the benefit of jazz. It's not a style, it's a mentality, and it is the mentality of musical mastery, which can also be understood as musical fluency, because at the end of the day, music is a language, and your job as a musician is to speak that language fluently as you speak your native language. And right there, that flips the whole script, because now you're thinking, so wait, I'm a master at my native language? Absolutely. If you compare your native language mastery to your musical mastery, you'll understand how much work you probably have to do, and it will probably scare you and actually make you sick to your stomach. And of course, that's why, you would get a teacher. So you'd move way faster along that journey and reach musical fluency, aka musical mastery, aka the ability to express your unique musical vision as fast as possible. All right, so here we're gonna dig deeper in the video because now you want the answers, you want the solutions. I'm going to give them to you in this entire video. Just like every video I make, this will cause bursts of enlightenment, and that's why my Intro to Fretboard Mastery, the free course, that's there to guide you on those bursts of enlightenment so you have something to channel that into. Back to the essential point of this video. This mastery mentality we speak of, this musical fluency we speak of, it can be simply understood as the ability to collaborate with forms. Now here's an example of a form. It's the 2-bar practice form, aka practice form 1, aka the cantus firmus. When you know what to do with this form on every level, what chord voicings can you play? What are all the different triadic voice leading pathways that exist? What kind of rhythmic displacement can I use over 2 measures of 4/4? How can I leverage call and response as a melodic framework? When you understand all of those things on this 2-bar practice form, you understand mastery as a mentality of musical development. You could say I'm telling you how to master this form, because once you master this form, it's the exact same skill, just projected on other forms. So you see, the collaboration with forms is the key factor, right? It's realizing that you are not solely responsible for the music. The forms carry on with or without you, and you are just linking into the forms and riding them and supporting them, but it's not all on you. The forms are your trustworthy collaborator, right? That's why the whole concept of jazz standards is such a big phenomenon, because the jazz standards, of course, are battle tested and proven through the different epochs of history. They keep coming back, so you can take it to the bank that those are really, really, really great places to begin this collaboration understanding in the process of developing musical fluency, and as a result becoming a master of your instrument. Now I'll give you an example of this collaboration mentality thing. So think of a freestyle extreme athlete, like a skier, moving through the obstacle course, right? All those jumps in that course, those are the chord changes, right? The skier is just collaborating with the chord changes. He's doing moves and tricks off those chord changes, off those obstacles, right? The whole course itself, that would be the form, right? It's a very simple analogy, but it helps you to understand like how you're thinking about music. Well, you got an obstacle there. What are you gonna do? I got a few tricks. I got a few pathways. I've got endless rhythmic variations on those tricks and pathways. And you're working through an entire form where you're developing pathways or vocabulary according to the chord changes or those obstacles within that form, right? That's what you want to start to think about as guiding all of your practice, right? So never practice out of context, of course, right? The classic mistake is just running scales. That's a complete waste of your practice time if you've been playing for at least 5 or 10, 15 years. Just to be clear, most of my students have been playing at least for like 12 years, bare minimum. I rarely talk to people who have been playing for a shorter period of time than that. There are some extreme exceptions there, but those just prove the rule that people who understand what I'm talking about, you guys who watch my channel, the people who actually take lessons from me and come into my school, you guys are very advanced, but you're trying to cross from advanced into mastery. It's a big leap. It's a quantum leap right there. And that's why most people never get there. They just stay stuck at advanced. They never understand Allan Holdsworth, and they never understand what Allan Holdsworth thinks, what Eddie Van Halen thinks. Once you understand what those guys think, you understand the mentality of mastery, and then music becomes a lot more simple. And an example of that would be this idea of you're collaborating with forms. And really, this is the counterintuitive secret that unlocks everything. It's just the idea that the parameters set you free. See, most players are thinking freedom means no rules. And that's the problem. That's why they're stuck. See, the parameters set you free because the song form is feeding the information to you. You're interpreting that information and then you're arranging it in the form of melodies and chords. The form is your collaborative partner. So as long as you abide by your partner, you stay true to your partner, you get to experience that beautiful improvisational freedom that you seek. And it's a paradox because it's not exactly freedom, but what is freedom? What we're talking about here is flow and creative awareness that is possible by accepting what your partner is giving to you and trusting your partner to the extent that you learn everything about your partner. I'm talking about forms here. The forms, they're your partner. Learn everything about the form, learn all of its secrets, and allow that to influence all of your vocabulary. This is how you never play the same lick ever again. You just keep learning different forms. And this goes deep. I mean, this is the V scale thing, right? You get up into V10, V11, V12. Yeah, you're in asymmetrical Allan Holdsworth form transcendence at that point. But that's really where you learn about composition, you learn about the subversion of these rules that everyone set for you. That's all going to be understood simply by being able to collaborate with, say, an Allan Holdsworth form, right? That's a very advanced concept, but the amount you would learn from that experience, insane, absolutely insane, by literally learning an Allan Holdsworth tune and getting to the point where you can comfortably improvise on it. That's why I literally did an Allan Holdsworth tribute concert. It was literally to get inside his mind, right? I don't have to play the same chops. That's not the point. I can play the same forms. I can collaborate with his forms. And as a result, I'm understanding all this new musical vocabulary by simply collaborating with his forms in earnest. Now, the reason 99% of guitarists never figure this out is because they're hung up on practicing scales and isolation. They're thinking technique is this hugely important thing they got to focus on. And as a result, you're digging a hole deeper and deeper and deeper and going farther away from the improvisational freedom that you think you're moving towards. It's classic. It's definitely not an exaggeration to say that only 1 in 100 guitarists really figure that out. Now, let's pull out this Allan Holdsworth mentality here. So we're going to understand this fretboard configuration concept, right? So we have our little 2-bar practice form here. Look what the fretboard looks like when it's D flat, right? There you go. Range optimized pathway. It's a pure triad. Look what the fretboard looks like when it's a C7. Oh, what do you notice? It's the same pathway, but down a half step. And then when the chord changes F minor, look, new fretboard configuration here, right? This is how we're visualizing the fretboard on each of these chord changes. This is the Holdsworthian mentality of fretboard reconfiguration. Every time the chord changes, you're gonna think of reconfiguring the fretboard. Now, I know from experience, a lot of you are nauseated by the thought of that because that's like, what? Yeah, it's a lot to digest. And I'm gonna show you exactly how you start working towards this, right? Now you can see why guidance is really, really, really important because you're delving in some deep waters here. Don't expect this to come easy, you know, but I'm gonna show you some tricks right here. I'm gonna give it all away. I've got nothing to hide. So if we take our little practice form 1, what we'll do is we'll just isolate certain parts of the grip, right? Instead of playing this whole thing, right? I don't have to play all those notes to make this form come to life. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm gonna do is, just to get started here on the idea of playing chord changes, right on that first level, like intro to playing chord changes at V0 on the practice form 1. Everyone's got to start here. If they want to achieve authentic musical mastery, we can isolate a region of the pathway, right? The good old string skip, right? Isolating that, just 2 note per strings on 2 strings, right? Go down a half step for the C, and then go to the F, where I'm using the F minor that is closest to that C. Right, it's in the same region. I'm changing the harmony, but in the same region of the guitar. That's voice leading, right? That's why the C leads me to the F minor. It's like, did I choose to play this particular F minor? No, the form brought me there. But of course, I had to work out some of these pathways, right? So now if I put this in context, 3, 4, see what I did? What was the point of this? I stayed all in the same region, right? Now, when I stay in the same region of the fretboard, right, I can comprehend all of those fretboard reconfigurations in that little part of the guitar. Do you start to see what's going on here? I know this is deep. For maybe a lot of you are not able to get to this mental level. But what we're talking about here is like every time the chord changes, the little spaces that your fingers can fit onto change. That's the skill. That's what you need to get insanely good at if you want to play at a masterful level of proficiency on guitar. Now the trick here is just to see the simplicity in what I've demonstrated, right? I only use triads. I was voice leading triads with the parameter of staying in the same region of the neck. That's always a classic thing to do. And it has a lot of musical benefits, right? Because you tend to play more voice-led melodies instead of like parallel jumping, right? If you know what I'm saying, if you guys took from classical theory, you don't want to have those big parallel jumps, you know, where the D flat moves to the C by half step, which is fine. But I don't want to have to do this for the F minor. That's not good. I could, it's fine. I can break the rules, I can do whatever I want. But to understand, the optimization is staying in the same part of the neck and taking advantage of the voice leading that's there, right? This little thing. Right? And I can do the same thing in any part of the neck. Same voice leading concept here, right? I connected the regions there. Just playing the D flat as a 2-note per string triad allows me to traverse different positions. This is how I access different voice leading opportunities, and this is how I inevitably find intrinsically fundamental melodies. This is exactly what Eddie Van Halen learned from playing piano. He understood forms right away. That's why he became a great songwriter, right? He understood forms. He knew chord changes because from piano, he was thinking in terms of chords. He didn't think in terms of scales. For some reason, on guitar, everybody wants to think of scales and they completely overlook the chord changes, which are actually the foundation of all the musical vocabulary you're ever going to use. Scales are certainly not it. They're nowhere near that. Jimi Hendrix understood the same thing, right? Because think about his predecessors. It's like Wes Montgomery, George Benson, like he learned guitar from watching those guys. That's why he was playing changes, just really simply. Jimi Hendrix could hear chord changes, right? He just decided to play like insanely deeply cutting blues licks over them, like Stevie Ray Vaughan. Like you can just play blues over everything. But he's still playing the changes. He's just playing blues over all of them. Then compare that to Allan Holdsworth, where he's playing the changes, but he's playing like intergalactic cosmic lineage through them. So now you understand the thing that you're trying to learn from jazz is not the stylistic part. You do not need to sound like a boring jazz musician from the 1950s, like show choir rhythm section. Jazz is a mental framework that provides access to limitless creative freedom, right? It's a certain set of mentalities that you put together to come to realizations, right? This is the process of achieving mastery. It has nothing to do with facts and theory and scales. It has everything to do with stacking a specific set of mental frameworks in the right order and then channeling your creativity in the place where it's getting the highest possible leverage. For example, playing one note, but it's the greatest thing you could have done. And this all has to do with understanding forms, becoming a collaborator with forms. This will prevent you from ever running out of ideas ever again. It is effectively the infinite creativity glitch. And I've taught this framework to hundreds. I literally can't keep track. I'll get to 1,000. I might already be over 1,000. I don't know. I've taught this to a lot of people. And now I've broken it down in this 5-step system, which I can literally teach you in one lesson. That's the whole point. I can teach you the entire thing in one lesson. I can give you the entire 5-step roadmap to mastery in one lesson. Essentially, I show you how to reach the summit of Mount Everest, and I give you all the tools you need to reach that summit, and I can do that for you in one lesson. Of course, it comes with an additional 4.5 hours of course material. It's the entire Ultimate Jazz Blues Mastery course, which I'm going to give you the foundation to understand and absolutely run with all that material in our one-on-one lesson, which is going to be recorded. So you can reference all those paradigm-shattering breakthrough moments for the rest of your life. So now I'm really speaking to you guys who've already done Intro to Fretboard Mastery. For the rest of you, start with Intro to Fretboard Mastery. Learn the 3 fingerings. Work on those for like 2 to 3 practice sessions. Get a little recording of yourself, and you can send it to me. You'll literally have my email from the Intro to Fretboard Mastery course. I'll send you some free additional stuff. That might be the time you consider taking the last lesson you'll ever need, right? That's gonna be the second link in the description, right? That's the one where I give you the full 5-step system in one lesson. I give you the entire 4.5 hours of Ultimate Jazz Blues Mastery to supplement the enlightenment that you're gonna experience in that one-on-one lesson. And that's it, man. You're blasted way off, all the way off. You know everything. You understand this whole chaotic nightmare of musical development. You think it's a chaotic nightmare because it's so disorganized on YouTube. If you're just trying to get free resources, put it all together into some cohesive roadmap, it's going to be impossible. The whole thing is the roadmap. You need to understand what you're moving towards, and now hopefully you completely understand that. Form collaboration. You need to understand exactly what you're moving towards and exactly what steps you're taking along that journey, and we can get 10 trillion% clear on that in one single lesson. So that's going to be the second link in the description, mentalitymusic.com/last lesson. I'll see you there.